So as you can tell, the one thing that we wanted to really end on with Edwin and Anne-Laure was this idea of hope, because there is, as you know, like, you're going to get really depressed if you always think about all of the terrible things that are happening out there.
That is a very good point. And there was actually an audience question during that session talking about, do we think fashion is going to be able to move towards responsible business models quickly enough without additional regulation? And if you'd asked me that like an hour ago, I probably would have said, no, external regulation is 100% what's needed. The industry isn't moving fast enough. All these other kinds of things. There is that encouragement that Anne-Laure is talking about when you actually see some of the change happening in the supply chain. You see some of the preparatory work that's going into making this a reality. So optimism is a good watchword, I think.
And, we need it because, the one thing that actually both of them point out is that a lot of the industry, and actually we're seeing this for sure, is thinking that the old way of doing sourcing still exists. And it doesn't. For the last 3 days, I think the one thing that we've been trying to say is that, A, the world is more complicated than it ever has been. And we need to understand where all of those things lie. But B, the other thing is that we're seeing companies actually, because of short-termism, right, of thinking about why their quarterlies are not making the number, they're throwing out some really kind of institutional knowledge that I get very, very worried about when I see that. Because once some of these people are gone from some of these organizations, the wholesale cuts of some of the technical arenas, and there's no buying that back. You can't buy that back, right? We saw a couple of big clients dismiss some of their big 3D efforts because they said, oh, there's no ROI. But we're like, then have you archived any of it? Have you thought about any of it? Or you're going to recreate it? You're going to hire back all of these people? Because there were no standards involved.
No, and I think Edwin said something quite important when he's, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's not the science that's the issue, it's the business case. Now, he was talking about recycling, but you could just as easily say the same thing about 3D and digital product creation. There is nothing wrong and very little missing from the digital product creation ecosystem that's required to make a fully kind of accurate digital twin of a garment or a piece of footwear. Is it all 100% connected? Not necessarily. But the technology is not the issue, I don't think, in a lot of those business case, in a lot of those kind of analysis you're talking about. It's that lack of kind of long-termism. You mentioned short-termism. It's that lack of vision, and it's that lack of recognition that different departments are connected to one another. It sounds silly, but like, it's very easy to forget when your product lifecycle relies on lots of things happening concurrently and then getting smushed together and reconciled at the end. Very easy to forget that each of those things has a sequential effect on the thing that happens after it. And if you can all be working from the same digital asset, if you can all be working from the same reference point, then you start to build back some of that institutional knowledge because you understand how your actions affect people who come after you and vice versa.
Yeah, and the silo mentality, that some divisions actually don't know what the other people are doing, and there's some serious unintentional consequences that come out of that, right? I mean, even just from a product point of view, for the end product itself, if you're not all connected somehow, what tends to happen is that you just build a lot of stuff that you can't sell because you don't understand what the end is. There's no circularity to it. It's very, very linear and analog today. And what scares me is when we go backwards into those. I thought after COVID, we would realize a couple of things. I really did. I really thought we would have less inventory. I thought we would have more digitization. We would have, we would have better product because we would see a lot of consolidation. What we ended up seeing is price war. goods not being sold, lots and lots of inventory buildup. And
so if you're looking at your balance sheets as a brand or a retailer, how much capital do you have tied up right now in inventory and things that you can't sell?
I won't say the big sportswear brand that has a lot of inventory that is in the public domain.
The answer is a lot, yeah. But I think like that's a business problem to solve now. Like there's nothing that digital product creation can do about existing inventory that's sat in your channels. That's not going to. What you can do is rethink. Like I really like what Isabel from REI was saying about radically rethinking all the processes that get you from idea to market. That kind of radical rethink is what's going to be required to do all the terrific inclusivity work and accessibility work that they're doing. It's also the kind of rethink that's going to be required to not end up in the same situation again with alarming amounts of inventory stuck in channels.
I hope that in these past 3 days, we've been able to touch upon issues that have helped people who are the audience that is listening in. It's hard sometimes running a conference for multiple types of people who are in the audience, especially when we're doing it on YouTube. But please tell us what your top takeaways were. If for you people in the audience, ping us on LinkedIn. Let us know what you think, what you need to learn more about. I always tend to add very high level things in as well, only because I had the privilege of being taught by so many people, and it truly was a privilege, and I hope that we're able to impart some of that knowledge and insight back to people who are starting out their careers as well, and also say that it's we hope for a better industry. And
I think that's a really good point, because I'm careful that we don't present a gloomy perspective on what it's like to work in fashion, right? I'm circling back to what I said at the start of the day today, but it was very much around what kind of fashion industry do you want to see? What do you want to see it become? Is it going to be one that continues to work the way that it always has, or is it going to be one that you see an opportunity to change? And I really liked what Anne-Laure was saying then around a lot of change historically in fashion was pushed top down, whereas there's a huge mandate now for that kind of grassroots kind of change that happens bottom up. So if you're getting into industry, or you're relatively new to industry, or you're like a process champion, you're a head of department, you're somebody who has kind of got a good oversight of your particular department, you're in a better position to drive change than you've ever been, because so many organizations are more receptive to hearing what works, what doesn't work, what can be different from the people who are actually doing it, rather than the people who are kind of sat above them.
Absolutely. And so with that, we're going to say goodbye, and for both Ben and I, it will be good night.
I'm not as late as you, I don't think, Janice. It's only kind of 7:30 here. I'll just say my highlights over the last 3 days. Like, I particularly enjoyed Sophia Bilali's presentation around the real-time revolution in luxury. I had a lot yesterday out of Gap's presentation around the road to digital fit. Today, I've loved what we saw from Viking and Covision, and specifically from Outdoor Afro and REI. There's just a huge amount to digest, and I think I'm going to spend a while doing it, but it's been great to get some of the thoughts out of my head and out of yours, even if it is as late as it is right now.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you who have stayed with us for 5 hours and 40 minutes. And this is us signing off. Good night.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks to the 3D Tech Fest team as well for putting on such a terrific event, and for having me back for this third day for the second year running.
That's a wrap. See you next year.
See you next year. Bye.
Thank you, guys.